The way I see the tarot is it's a map of our journey here. And then the cards are simply, it's like a mirror. You're looking into a pond and they're just reflecting back to you different energies that are already present. So the benefit, of course, is, I negated that. I knew that was there, but I didn't want to look at it. Or, oh my gosh, I know that that's really something that's wonderful about me, and I had forgotten. Or, oh, there's a tool that's available now to help me that I hadn't really given credence to. So it's only to stir up all the different possibilities that are present in the moment that open this availability of choice. You know, it's not woo-woo. It's really a magnification and an opening to be able to see everything that's present, plus what perhaps you haven't been able to see.
Welcome to the Somatic Pleasure Podcast, where the body is the teacher and sensation is the path. I'm your host, James Hummocky. Here we dive into intimacy, truth, erotic intelligence, and the raw edges of being fully alive. Heads up, this isn't always safe for work. Some episodes include explicit language, erotic themes, and conversations not meant for little ears. This space isn't sanitized, it's real. You've been warned. So if you're ready to feel all of it, come on in. Toni Jean, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good today. Thank you, James.
Well,
it is day by day.
It is day by day, yes, especially in this climate home. Well, it's really good to see you, and I'm so grateful that you agreed to sit down with me and have this interview so that people can get to know you. I can get to know you a little better, and I'm just really excited to hear about what your journey has been and where you are now. So one of the things that you are a co-founder of this place, which is called Spirit House Center for Healing. Now, how did that come about? How long has this been going on, and how did you get involved, and what's the little story there?
It's a big story.
I know it's a big story.
It's actually called the Center for Attitudinal Healing.
Okay.
Is the 501c3 official name. So the attitudinal healing is an important part of it because we've been created under the umbrella of attitudinal healing in general, which was started by Jerry Jampolsky, and many, many, many years ago. Ron got involved in that work. Ron, my partner, right? Co-founder. Actually, I would say more the jump starter of the center. When he came out of his cancer journey many years ago, probably over 20 years ago, he had this vision to start a nonprofit to build an underground ceremonial center, which he did. And right around that time, we met. He shared his dream with me, and I thought it was a great idea. And I said, okay, I'll jump in. I'm on board. It was really a vision that spoke to my heart and my soul. All the principles of attitudinal healing are healing principles in general. Although I was not that involved in the Attitudinal Healing Center back in Marin, I had many people and friends who were, so I was very familiar with it. And then it was step by step. It broke ground, and we started building. And the famous line, of course, if you build it, they will come. And that happened.
Yes. People have been coming here now for how many years?
Well, it's been space? 18 years, 17, 18 years since we had our very first ceremony.
So I'm actually looking forward to digging in more into the Center for Attitudinal Healing and its development when I sit down with both you and Ron later on. But I did want to get a little piece of that in here because I know it's just such a big part of, well, first off, it's a big part of the community, and it's also just a big part of what you do and what you guys do here. And go ahead.
I think that, Ron and I came together later in life. He was just going to be 60, and I was 53. Mm-hmm. And it became our baby, mm-hmm. right? It was our child that we gave birth to, and, has grown up now. It's got a life of its own. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people involved. And, I have gotten the opportunity to come many times to ceremonies, solstices and equinox and, the various and the sundry other things that you do here. And it's a big part of my life even. I can feel it. It's like coming home.
Many people have said that. Yeah. It's like coming home,
yeah.
Which makes our hearts very happy because that's really what we wanted to create. It's not, we're not denominational, so.
Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't matter what you believe or anything, what your background mm-hmm. is. So the variations of the people that come here and all say, yeah, it's like coming home. Mm-hmm. Very sweet.
It's a beautiful space. But there's a lot of other pieces to you, Toni, that I want to dig into. And one of my favorite parts, one of the favorite things that I've gotten to experience with you is tarot readings. And, I've had various relationships with my own personal relationship with tarot and, the different things like that. And the way that you do it, the way that you read, the way that you sit in presence with me, and I'm assuming that it's with everybody else, anybody I've ever talked to that sat with you says the same thing, is just, it feels really unique. And it feels very, it doesn't feel woo-woo. It feels very supportive. And it's almost like a great psychological discovery, to come in and sit with that and have you talk about the symbology and what it means and how that it relates to my life. So I'd like to know, how did you get into that, and how long have you been doing this, and what is your take on?
I've been doing readings for probably 35 plus years. I had a reading done long ago by a woman who I really admired. She was sort of a wild, earthy, long blonde hair, always wore skirts, and the goddess type. You'd see her in town, she was always barefoot. And I was very much more conservative in myself and wasn't as free-spirited, but I admired that in her. She did tarot readings. I came and had a tarot reading with her. I don't remember a whole lot about it other than there was a familiarity with the cards and with the energetics that there's that statement again, I felt like home. Mm. And so, I don't know, past life, who God knows why these things stir up. So I started to learn about the cards. She also was teaching. Mm. She had a group of other tarot readers that I became a part of. And then I was introduced to Angela Sarian, who is much more of a well-known mm-hmm. teacher, and she's an anthropologist, an incredible person. And I was very lucky to go to her little chestnut office in San Francisco and be taught by her in small groups of people. And so I just loved the information and the psychological sort of map that the tarot sets out in front of you to understand more what's going on within us. So it just became a part of my own unfolding in my own life. And then as time went on, I practiced with other people. And then, you know, the inevitable, oh God, do I charge money? Can I do this? That stage happened. And then I became pretty popular with readings, word of mouth. And then I decided I wanted to teach. So that's sort of the genesis of that. Why it is there's a particular style, well, I think that that's true of any reader. Mm-hmm. You know, you're going to sit down. I mean, you probably remember Antonia Lamb. She did readings, but she was really known for astrology. And I think we just bring our own journey, our own personality, our own experience into the set and setting of a reading, and that creates the exchange. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, when I sit down with someone, I'm not just doing a reading for you, James. We are having a reading together, yes. Right? Because together we're in the experience of those archetypal energies that are advising both of us in the moment. So maybe that's what makes it unique.
Well, and, you know, for people that maybe haven't experienced a reading or, you know, have that sort of, you know, standoffish idea, you know, when they think about tarot or going and getting a reading, how would you explain not just the process of a reading, but what it is that's happening? You were just talking about the archetypal energies, and I know there's a lot of symbology, and there's a lot of different kinds of decks too, as far as I know. I know there are. Yeah. So I'd love to hear, like, how would you explain that to somebody, or how would you open that door to for somebody?
Well, the way I see the tarot is it's a map of our journey here. And so if you come for a reading with me, well, the first thing we'll do is we'll look at your lifetime symbols, which is part of the system that I use, which I was schooled on years and years ago, which I find to be extraordinarily interesting. It's sort of like getting your astrology sign, you know, given to you, the certain attributes and characteristics of Scorpio, right? You may relate to it.
I love that.
Right. Right. And so there's, in the system, you get an archetypal symbol, and that tells other things about you. And then you have a growth cycle and a growth year. So we talk about all that in the beginning of the reading, which then can help people really sort of root in to how these symbols are applicable and have meaning in their own life. And then you will choose the 10 cards for the reading. We'll look at a particular question or issue. And then the cards are simply, it's like a mirror. You're looking into a pond, and they're just reflecting back to you different energies that are already present. So the benefit, of course, is, I negated that. I knew that was there, but I didn't want to look at it.
Right.
Or, oh my gosh, I know that that's really something that's wonderful about me, and I had forgotten. Or, oh, there's a tool that's available now to help me that I hadn't really given credence to. So it's only to stir up all the different possibilities that are present in the moment that open this availability of choice. Because I think sometimes people come for readings because they feel stuck. Mm-hmm. They feel, you know, they're in a very narrow viewpoint of what's going on, and then the tarot opens up and suddenly, you know, it's not woo-woo. It's really a magnification and an opening to be able to see everything that's present, plus what perhaps you haven't been able to see. So I think that that's the usefulness.
Well, and I know that, one of the things, and this was probably stuck in my head years ago too, but, and oftentimes this is portrayed in the media or in movies and whatnot of tarot being this place where it's predictive, it's telling your future. It's this, get the death card, and now you're going to die kind of a thing, And so I think a lot of people, and I know that I had that sort of feeling, sensation about it, and it was like, that stuff is bullshit and I don't want to do that. But what I've come and had, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 readings with you at least over the years. And what I've gotten out of it, like you said, it's a map, it's a mirror, it's a way of kind of breaking a cycle. It allows, like, okay, well, maybe I can look at this in the way of like, this is a life process. This is where I am in my life process. And this is, here's some tools that I can use. And it often is like a really deep therapy, and I come out of it feeling, like, I have some answers, and it hasn't been predictive. Like, I can't say that there was any reading that then I go back and go like, oh, that came true. It was never like that. It's like, it's just giving me a guide of where I'm at now is the way I feel about it. And it's just been really helpful to look at life a little bit differently, just have a little different perspective on it. So I've appreciated that a lot. And I hope other people will, take the time to dive into those things. I know that there's a lot of people out in the world that are sort of manipulators and, false, prophets, whatever you want to call them. But the way I've experienced your readings is that they are really, like I said, wonderful therapy. And I love the symbology. I love the whole bit. It's really neat. Yeah.
And they do bring guidance.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that in. And yes, there are tarot readers out there that are fortune tellers.
Right.
And especially new people, when they sit down, I always say, I'm not a fortune teller. If that's what you came for, go elsewhere, right? However, the cards can predict a probability line.
That's a good way to put it.
Sort of like, okay, with this in play and this in play, and because the cards also have astrological symbols on them, and then suddenly, all these things are pointing to July. So, we can sort of peek into the possibilities. But I think that the thing that's interesting about that is, oh yeah, this is the way it's going to unroll if I don't take action.
Right.
If I don't do anything. And so, again, the choice of, okay, this is what's at play. So now how do I empower myself to stand in the middle of this and move it in the direction that I choose and not just be moved by circumstances.
Right.
So
that is another good point to bring in. That's something that I really like about it also, is that it's empowering you. When you look at that, that you can actually make different choices. And in the readings, it actually says that, like, you can make different choices. You are actually ultimately in power here. So that's a beautiful, and I think we could probably talk about this for a long time, but I want to get on to another thing about you that I really appreciate and have really enjoyed over the years, is your poetry. I know you don't really think of yourself as a poet, but I know I have experienced you as an amazing poet, and powerful, deep, soulful work. And I know, I've seen it in settings with other people. I've seen you, and I see how it moves people. So I'd like to talk about your journey with poetry and how that came in, and what your purpose with poetry is.
such a good question, because I feel like I am more and more coming out. I used to describe myself as a closet poet. Yeah, as we just shared a little bit ago, poetry is probably my biggest passion. I love writing, and it gives me such great satisfaction when I can finally put an end to a poem that I feel good about and share it and have it be received. It's been an interesting journey because my life is very full and I have not given it a priority place. So I write when I can on the side. There's an anthology of women poets for Mendocino that's just coming out. I have a couple of poems in that.
Oh, great.
Which is great because I'm really not published. I haven't followed through to do that part of it. But I have been looking at the obstacles in my way of creating a poetry book and slowly sort of leaning into lifting those things and being able to move forward with that. So that's on my plate right now.
Taking those steps, to expose and be vulnerable and present yourself to the world.
And giving myself readings to help me with that process, right? Yeah.
So I know, like most of us, there's the term wounded healer that we tend to use, and we've all have had to come through things, whether it's, some people it's a cancer, some people it's, the death of loved ones or emotional baggage, things coming from childhood and that kind of a thing. And I know that what you do here really helps people move through their healing journeys. And I'm just curious about your own healing journey, what that might have looked like, if there's anything that this has really been helpful, this process with the poetry and the tarot and the development of the center, and how that has affected your life.
It's all been circled around my own wounded life or experience. Probably for me, I think there's all these terms now. There wasn't good attachment. I didn't have good boundaries or taught in that way. I was definitely a daughter of the patriarch. I took on a lot of those programs and conditioning. And I had suicidal ideology as a teenager. I didn't really want to be here. I didn't understand what was going on. I had no idea that I was lovable. Had all the classic wounding of being unworthy. And the whole menu. And I first, I think, started to address all that in a Gurdjieff school in my early 20s, which is a esoteric, mystical study.
The work.
The work, that's right. Where I think I had the first shock of my own awakening, which was, of course, the reality that who I thought I was and how I thought it was not. And so everything subsequently has been a healing, I think, of those misperceptions and that kind of conditioning, programming, and the layers and the interaction between those programs. Everything, I think, that followed in my life was an effort to unpack, dissolve, unlearn, and be reconditioned in terms of what is more true. So poetry is part of that. All the esoteric studies, getting involved in shamanism, doing medicine work. I became very interested in symbols and symbology, and so became a collage artist. did collage workshops as well, helping people to put together, vision boards and artistic representations of all that symbology that was stirring up in the psyche, and then being able to sit back and look at those like dream work. Everything became a process of deeper discovery. And I was pretty excited about all the alternative ways that were granted to people that didn't have a college graduate degree, right? To be able to get involved and do this work. And I was a very serious student of metaphysics and finding teachers and finding workshops. I considered myself a workshop junkie. I had a few addictions that I needed to really clean up. Now, I think when we do addiction work, we have to get to the core. It's so much about the longing to meet ourselves that I think that addiction it drives the addiction. Until we are really clear what that longing is about, it, finds all these other avenues of satisfaction and distraction to keep us from really meeting that true desire to be authentic and to be who we really are. So,
hey there. I am so glad you're here, and I hope you're enjoying the show. And if you are, be sure and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You know the drill, and it really helps us out. And if something hits home or you have a question, please leave a comment. I look forward to the interactions, and I read them all. Thank you so much. And now, on with the show. Well, it's like Gabor Mate. Are you familiar with his work? And, he he almost doesn't even like to use the word addiction. He says these are perfectly reasonable behaviors for very unreasonable circumstances. That's very paraphrased, but we find ways to create safety, to create meaning, to create connection, and oftentimes those are very unhealthy things. And so we can unlearn that. So I really love the way you're talking about that, the unlearning and coming in and meeting ourselves at that core place where we're not broken. Ultimately we're not broken.
Right, where that isn't really the reference that we're coming from anymore. But I think it's fair to say, anyway, in my own case, it is the I'm peeling back of the onion. And that I actually believe, and it's been my experience, as long as I have a body, and I have body identification, and I experience the limits of my own humanity, then there's always going to be more and more to discover and uncover about what's in the way of me fully being embracing and extending the light of my divinity and bringing that forth. So it's a beautiful journey of being able to hold both polarities.
When you say both polarities, what do you...
Human and divine.
Divine, yeah.
Yeah, as they are, in their mix within me and within all the people that we work with. It is the journey, and a constant unfolding.
Constant unfolding.
Yeah, I don't believe that we ever really fully arrive, except for perhaps at the threshold of our death.
So, and this is, just my own way of looking at things too, but maybe you have some experience with this, is that there's the time of pulling back or unpeeling, the conditioning that we grew up in, let's say, where we have the social conditioning, the family, the religion, whatever it is, right? And then the things that whatever we did to help combat that, whether it was, addictions and, taking things to soften the blows a little bit. But what I've found is that as that peels back, I mean, I could sit and, it'd be turtles all the way down. I could just like, oh my God, oh my God, there's another thing. But what I've found for me is that as those layers fall away, then there's just, you say there's it never ending. You open up that, like we'll call it divinity. There's the discovery part, right? There's the ahas and the awe of life that earlier I couldn't get to because of all that. And then as I peeled away, now I'm, in that. And of course, there's still negative things that happen or have happened or come back to haunt me. But the journey has changed for me. And I'm just wondering, like for you, do you have some experience about that or around that?
Most definitely. And I think it's the non-dual work that we study and practice here, which really focuses on the difference between our experience and our identification with who we are in the experience. So now I can have an experience that could be, could cause reactivity or create an emotional bump. But I also am in touch and have this realization that in my true nature, right, the true identity of who I am is not going to be determined or touched by that experience.
Right.
And so there's so much more availability to have more experiences, to open myself to the stuff that's difficult and the stuff that's sublime as just part of the learning. And that I know that there's this part in me that can integrate it and that can metabolize it. And that is true to itself regardless of what's happening externally. And that's a very different way of living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, or that what I was asking to is just that I like to look at it like I'm able to ride the vicissitudes,
Right.
like a magic carpet ride or a surfer out on the ocean. Here it comes. They're not going to stop. I tell people that suffering is going to happen. You don't have to look for it.
Ask any Buddhist, right? Yeah.
But what we do have a issue with, I think, in a lot of our cultures is looking for pleasure, looking for, expanding that piece of our lives. Sometimes there might be the idea that if we do that, then we're just being hedonists, and not really being realists about life, But boy, I tell you, it's just a totally different way of looking at life, and I love what you were saying there, that these are happening, these things are happening, but that core, you become your own touchstone in a way. That part's okay.
Yeah.
And we'll make it through this piece, and that's age and experience, I know as well, but doing the deep work. Yeah.
And also I love what you say, that generally we find a lot of strategies are to avoid suffering and keep moving toward pleasure. But, one of the teachings is, and I find it to be true, if we were really able to open more with compassion, with the heart, to our own and other suffering, then the pleasure there's nothing to seek, because inherent in the experience of just opening to all of life is pleasure, is a very simple pleasure. And I think, in cutting off and wanting to resist the challenge or the suffering we cut ourselves off from the pleasure, so that we have to then push, right, to get more.
Right.
When we're in balance, the pleasure in the small things is available so much more often, all the time, in fact. And it reminds me actually of what poetry does, to swing back to the conversation about poetry, and why I think that it's so valuable on the path. Really, beautiful poetry will bring us to that, will help us meet that, the small pleasures, and the opening to the paradox of the sorrow, the pain, as well.
Well, who was it said the language of the resistance, or the language of the revolution, will be poetry? Wasn't that I know who it is, but I can't remember his name. But so I know that you hold space for people. You guys have you facilitate groups here. There's weekly groups, and one of the questions that comes up is it's an art form. I've watched you guys do it, how you hold space with people, how you guide groups. And I would just love to hear about your own personal development in coming into that. It's not a thing that most people just step into without some sort of context or training or personal difficulties that they have to get through to be able to present themselves in front of a group. It's a real art form.
Well, that's such a interesting question. I never started out to want to be a facilitator, to do sort of like none of the things really I'm doing now I ever really thought that I would do. I didn't start out like I want to be a poet, I want to be a facilitator, I want to be a tarot reader. I began doing what I loved, I think. And as I did that, the world brought to me more and more experience to do that. And it became more and more just part of what was easy, to do what I loved. And I think the idea of being a facilitator, if we do anything well, if we can do that well, it's because there's no hierarchy in it. We're here to just, somebody's got to plug in the tea, set up the room, facilitate the group, put out the notices. Right. We can facilitate that. Why? Because we want to share what we love to talk about. And those people who show up to be in the group are here with us together. I mean, there's no hierarchy. We're all learning together. And maybe that's what makes that facilitation role unique for us, because we're pretty humble in that way. We don't claim to be any further along the path than is perfect for us to be, which is perfect. James, you're perfect where you are on your path, right? We're all here exactly where we need to be, having a conversation about something that seems to be useful for all of us in all these different ways that we get to share. So when Ron and I facilitate, we're just sort of keeping order.
For the herd of cats.
Right. I mean, we have
Yes.
we have a particular format, I think, that really works well. We do not invite anyone to give advice, including ourselves. That's a great, I think, role of a facilitator. We're not here to tell our long, shaggy, dramatic stories, and sort of hijack the group. We're not here to say this is how we all are. We speak from our own I experience and speak from our heart and try to be authentic. So in that way, I think it's easy to facilitate because the group runs itself. It finds its own resonance in that kind of field. When we do other groups here, set and setting is a big deal for us. You've been to the solstices and equinoxes. It's like setting up Spirit House and putting roses along the path when people arrive. And
You do an amazing job.
Yeah, just those touches that it invokes something so that when people enter into that space, they've already been primed. You know, there's already been an invitation. There's already been an announcement. You are welcome here. Thank you for coming. You know, now let's see what we can conjure. You know,
Yes, stir up the energies and get people involved. You know, I hear you, and I understand that place of not creating a hierarchy and not hijacking the group and being that. But you also know, you have to know that you both specifically right now are leaders in this community, and people look at you that way. They look to you for leadership, you know, and that's a particular position to hold. And so how do you feel about that? How do you hold that? You know, because I know you are very humble. I know that. And I know that neither of you reach out to control or manipulate or take on, you know, the I am the big shot.
Yeah, I don't,
Do you see yourself as a leader?
you know, most of the time, no. I don't. And when it's pointed out to me, you know, it's like, you know, a very good example. Ron and I didn't get vaccinated when it was the thing to do. And there was a lot of backlash in the community. I think that was the first time I realized, oh my God, you know, people are looking at us as leaders. So suddenly we became leaders, especially for the people that didn't want to get vaxxed. I didn't really want to represent either side, you know, so it was uncomfortable a little bit for me. It's like, these are personal choices. It's nobody's business. Are you right? But
right.
when you're in this role in the community, you do get projected on. And I have often done my best when Ron and I, you know, will facilitate. Early on, it was like, oh, this perfect couple. And it's like, please, do not be mistaken. People like Eric, who hang around a lot, he knew the truth. Right. I mean, we're perfect for each other, I would always say. But we're not the perfect couple. That's some pipe dream, you know. So, leadership, it is a big responsibility. I think when we do the solstices and the equinoxes, we do take that on. It's like, okay, in that role, how do we want to present? What do we want to catalyze, bring forth in those ceremonies? And I think that, you know, I'm getting more used to that role. But generally, it's something that I do forget about. It's like I don't think of myself in that way. Sometimes when we go to events, you know, Ron is recognized everywhere because he's done so much more community work and has been really associated, I think, more with Spirit House. Maybe not. I guess I'm Mrs. Spirit House. You know, I'm aware. Oh, you know, we're known.
Right.
We have a reputation. I've heard about things that we do from other people that has surprised me, right? And it's like, oh, okay. There's a way in which I think you do have to fortify your own inner shielding for good or for bad, you know. To be projected on in a good way. We've been put on a pedestal, and then we've also disappointed people by some of the choices.
Not you.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Some of the choices that we've made. So you can't really be true and authentic to your own inner leadership, follow your own inner authority, if you're caring too much about what everybody's going to think and do. So we hold it lightly. And at some point, you know, we just have had conversations even, wow, if we lose people that are attracted and part of Spirit House because of that, that's just part of it.
Yeah, right. And that probably is a lot of what makes you really good at what you do, is, holding that loosely and not taking it on as a identity in a way, and understanding how to protect yourself, but then also let people have their own experiences,
Totally. I think for me, getting involved in that Gurdjieff school, which I mentioned early on, after all was said and done, it was a cult. And so I developed a energy for that kind of frequency and have a kind of disdain for it.
Right.
And it was hilarious because there was a community member some time back that did accuse us and Spirit House of being a cult.
Yeah.
And, it was a good belly laugh for Ron and I, because projection is a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to see and hear and extrapolate and come away from Spirit House or a reading or an encounter or a group with whatever they need. Oftentimes, we go into things with a very set expectation, and above and beyond anything else, that has got to be validated for our own inner identity. And so if this particular person walked away feeling that we were a cult, it actually said more about him in the long run than it did about us. That needed to be said.
Right.
He needed to make that statement to the community and to the world. So
yeah, whatever's happening with other people, we can't direct that or guide that. And
I don't believe in defending. We do our best to take responsibility for what happens here, to clear up any misunderstandings. If someone needs to have an open discussion about that, we're available. But in the Course in Miracles, which we studied for many years, one of the teachings is defense is a form of attack.
Really
and
good.
It's a very interesting, right? Yeah, way of looking at it. It's like, okay, we're really not here to defend any position, but we are open to discussing interpretations of events and situations and learning from them, because we're constantly learning, students and teachers for each other, right? So any of these projections or kaboffles along the way are another growth opportunity, right?
Another growth opportunity. Oh man, I love those. Start bringing this to an end, but there is something I want to ask you as well. And what parts of you feel most transformed by this work that you do and that you guide people in?
I think that the unworthy, shy, lack of purpose, lack of meaning, scared, person I knew as I grew up has transformed. I still have my fixations, my weaknesses, my limitations, but they don't get in the way of what I feel like I've come to do, what I can offer, what I love, what I believe in, what I want to take a stand for, and how I want to share my heart and receive the hearts of others. It's more of an exploration now and a discovery. And more of a willingness to be here, to be embodied, to live the life that I've been given, to be in the miracle of it instead of the resistance and the denial and the fear of it.
Toni, that is perfect. And a question that I like to ask people at the end is, what are you passionate about right now?
Mm-hmm. Passionate about poetry, yeah, and about tarot readings, self-discovery, healing. There's nothing more fulfilling than to be allowed to bear witness to someone's aha, epiphany, healing, process of discovery, to be a part of that. Because, the understanding, of course, there's only one of us here. So to be joined in that sacred, holy joining, to grow and be grown together, I'm very passionate about that. Yeah.
Well, it shows. It shows on your face. It shows in how you show up in the community, how you've shown up in my life. So I have deep, deep appreciation for you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here today. Thank you for once again tuning in to the Somatic Pleasure Podcasts. If anything moved you or landed deeply or sparked a question, please be sure and leave a comment. And share this with all your friends and the folks you feel like might benefit from the information here. Please be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. Every Friday, 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and be sure to join the live Q&A afterwards. And if you want to keep this conversation going, please join us inside Pan's Sanctuary, a private community for seekers of truth, lovers of embodiment, and somatic mischief makers. Hope to see you there. Have a great day.